In this video, I'm going to share with you the top exercises that, in my experience, cause injury. One of them is taking a weight and lifting it over your head. It's a good idea to stretch your shoulders. I love it when people hang because that creates more space between the bones, making for more freedom in the shoulders. But if you push over your head, that puts a lot of strain on the labrum of your shoulder. And if that tears, that is really hard to recover from. The way I explain it is your shoulder is a ball and socket joint, and the shoulder is not as deep as your hip. Your hip is designed to bear weight, but the shoulder is more shallow. So when you lift your arm overhead, can you see if there's weight on it, it can put pressure on the lower elements like the labrum, and that can cause injury. So I can't stress enough, don't bear weight over your head. It's okay to pull back, to pull down, and if you're laying down, it's okay to push in that direction, but just not over your head in this direction. Another exercise that I see injuring my patients is abdominal workouts when done poorly. It's really important to make sure you're doing them correctly, because if you're not engaging the lower abdominal muscles, often you're engaging the psoas muscle, the hip flexor. The hip flexor attaches to the low back, to the hip, and that's how it causes the leg to raise up. So if you're trying to do a pelvic tilt and instead you use the muscle that lifts the hip as well as the pelvis, can you see how that's going to put aberrant strain on the low back? And it can lead to things like disc injury. Another way I find people injuring themselves during their workout is if they hold their breath. If you're holding your breath, you're relying on the ligamentous strength and less on your muscle strength. That's why you feel stronger when you hold your breath, because your muscles don't have to do as much. So if you have to hold your breath to lift something, it is too heavy for your muscles. So if you want to strengthen your muscles, breathe out when you're doing the muscle contraction. This is especially important because if you hold your breath and your ligaments just can't withstand that pressure, guess what? They're going to tear or blow. So make sure you can blow out during the contraction. Another way to think about it is if you're holding your breath, that pressure has to go somewhere. And if it's not out your mouth, it might just be out your back. Another way I find people hurting themselves is when they're wanting to get stronger, so they increase the intensity and the duration at the same time. So generally speaking, you want to increase one thing. So either increase the intensity, like the weight, or increase the duration, like the reps, but not both, because then you're vulnerable to injury, because that exponentially taxes your body. If you work out to exhaustion, chances are you're going to lose your form, and that makes you more vulnerable to injury as well. Another common way I find people hurting themselves is if they're running at an incline that is very steep. The steeper the incline, the more vulnerable you are, because if you don't have the flexibility to handle that incline, something's going to give. It could be your ankles, your knees, your hips, your low back. So be careful with running or walking on inclines. You should also be careful with squatting. Squatting requires a lot of flexibility. So if you're noticing your heels are coming up or your knees are going in front of your toes, chances are you don't have the flexibility to do a squat, especially with weight. So if you're doing squats, make sure you have a personal trainer or some healthcare provider observe your squat to give you pointers on how to squat safely. The last thing you want to do is blow out your knee doing a squat, because that's going to limit how much you work out. I always say work out in a way so that you can work out tomorrow. Poor fitting shoes is another way to get injured. If they're too small, they can lead to hammer toe, bunions, claw toes. If they're too big, they can make you vulnerable to tripping and falling. Shoes with too little support can lead to plantar fasciitis, but shoes with too rigid of a support or too much support can also harm the body. It's really a good idea to bring in the shoes you work out in to your healthcare provider or your personal trainer to make sure they're appropriate for your style of workout. And last but not least, do not ignore bad pain. Yes, when you work out, there's going to be some pain, no gain, right? But then there's bad pain. So muscle pain is something that you can almost tell it's good because it's working the muscle. Bad pain tends to be sharp, tends to be in the joint, tends to be something a little harder to ignore. Do not ignore bad pain. That's your body saying, stop doing that. If you have any doubt about the type of pain you're experiencing, talk to your healthcare provider, and hopefully that's one of us here at Drummond Chiropractic. I hope this has been helpful, and until next time, stay well.